Hi, bonjour tout le monde. My name is Nicole Boudreau. I'm in Montreal. We are presenting today the webinar on the modifications to the standards who are driving processing, the principles and the permitted and the substances that are permitted in processing facilities. So before we start the webinar as such with Madame Rochelle Eisen, I will remind you of a few key steps of the review process for those who may not be familiar with this. So the review process has been launched in 2023. It has to be done every 5 years, otherwise the organic standards are archived. And it is conducted in accordance with the practices for standardization by national bodies set forth by ISO IEC Guide 59. The review process involved addressing over 300 requests for modifications to the standards. All these requests for modifications were submitted by the sector, by the industry, by you all. So we organized 189 two-hour meetings of 13 working groups and task forces. Members of working groups and task forces make recommendations on the proposed modifications to the standards. And then we have prepared 5 meetings of the Technical Committee on Organic Agriculture. So the Technical Committee on Organic Agriculture is composed of the voting members who will vote on the recommendations submitted by the working groups and task forces. We also held a public comment period. We had to resolve 900 comments submitted during this public comment period. And then we resolved all the negative votes that were cast under the ballot launched by the Canadian General Standards Board, CGSB. So the standards presented to you were adopted by a majority of the voting members of the technical committee. We therefore would like to remind you that the OFC that I represent does not determine the content of the standards. The OFC's role is to administer the revision process, which concludes when the voting members of the technical committee have voted by ballot under the supervision of the CGSB. The review team, with all the work that has been done, OFC really wants to thank the review team. You see the members of the review team, Marie-Ève Levert, who is the chair of the Technical Committee on Organic Agriculture, Alison Grant, chair of the Crop Working Group. There were 2 working groups. François Labelle, chair of the Livestock Working Group, Rochelle Eisen, that is our speaker today, chair of the Organic Integrity and Composition and also Crops Grown Under Structures. Elodie Nadeau is the chair of the Maple Syrup Working Group. Tia Lofsgaard is the chair of the Fairness Working Group. And then we had Ariane France, Margaret Graves, Rebecca Winhouse, and Desiree Jans, who were helping to manage the 13 working groups, and Janet Wallace, who is our dedicated in-house writer. She has written an article every month on the review process since 2023 to explain how it works and to present the issues that were raised during the review. OFC also thanks the 120 members of the working groups and task forces, the members of the technical committee. There are 36, I think, voting members, and of course the Canadian General Standards Board. OFC also thanks Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, which is funding 75% of the review cost through the Agri Assurance Program. The project budget totals $675,000, and the industry must cover 25% of this amount. It accounts for $175,000. So we have sponsors who are helping us, but we still need the help from you all, because without standards there is no trade and no processing. So we still have to collect $95,000. We hope you will support us. You go to the OFC website and then you will see support our review, and it's very easy. There are different options, even with a credit card, to pay your contribution. After the webinars are done, there are a couple of other steps that we will do. The post-mortem, we do that after every review that we manage. It is to know what you have enjoyed and what would need to be improved. It's the third time that the Organic Collaboration manages the review, and each time we want to improve, to make progress, but all your input is welcome because it helps you understand how you can manage all this information. The OFC also manages the standards interpretation committee, what is called the Agri-SIC. And the Agri-SIC, has been created in 2009 to answer questions submitted by the industry and also by the certification bodies. And all the final questions and answers published on OFC website made by the Agri-SIC are legally binding. So it is a very important role. So as we have new standards, we have to revisit all the final questions and answers posted on OFC website, so to have them complying with the 2026 Canadian Organic Standards. It is a work in process. We hope to be finished by the end of April, we hope, but it is under progress. And also we will be monitoring the relocation of the Canadian Organic Standards. I don't know how close you are to the review process and the standards management, but the standards were owned, but are actually still owned by the Canadian General Standards Board, CGSB, but the Canadian government has announced the dissolution of the CGSB, whose operations officially ended on March 31st, last March. So we're lucky because the organic sector is more than pleased, because the revised standards were published a few days before March 31st. That was our publish our revised standards before the CGSB disappearance. So our standards are ratified, are valid for 5 years. So the Standards Council of Canada will transfer the Canadian Organic Standards to another standardization agency, and we are closely monitoring this transfer to ensure that our organic standards remain in good hands and that their maintenance proceeds just as democratically under the supervision of the new agency that will be responsible for the management of our standards. So today, Rochelle Eisen, she has been in the organic sector since she's born, and
Sorry.
She has Rochelle is an organic processor, an organic inspector, mainly doing inspections in processing facilities for the last 10 years. Since she started 3 decades ago, she refuses to count the number of inspections she has done for organic grower stakeholders and operators. So Rochelle, I leave you the mic. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Nicole. And before I forget, the 2 people asked about where will the presentation be. So could you just go over that, Nicole, where it's going to be housed and when it will be up?
Yeah, the recording. So what we'll do, the recording itself will be posted on the website, but it will be on YouTube, but you will be able to access the recording on through OFC website. All the links will be on the OFC website. And we will also share the deck that we use now. And we will also prepare what a lot of people are asking for. It is a comparison between the 2020 and the 2026 standards with track changes. So it's easier to follow. We're all preparing this, but as the revised standards has only been published on March 26th. And we had to make edits and do a lot of things until the last minute. So all this paperwork will be done in the coming days, in the coming weeks.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Nicole, for that introduction. And Janine, I can see your comments. Now, everybody should know that you don't have access to open mics, so the only way you can communicate with us is through the Q&A option. And only the panelists like myself and Nicole can see your questions. And please put your questions in there. I will not be addressing them while I'm doing the presentation, unless it's a showstopper and I happen to notice. But I'm probably going to focus on one screen, and then I'll answer all your questions post the event, and it will be a written response. So put your questions in. Hopefully, I will do a reasonable job in answering them. And Janine, thank you for the compliment. Gibson just wrote a comment about how long I've been in the industry, but I think Janine's been in it longer than I, so that's even more significant. Okay, so we are here looking at the Canadian General Standards Board organic principles, starting in clause 3, looking at significant changes in terms and definitions that were made in the standard that will impact processing operations. I don't think it'll actually, um, are there any changes to reporting requirements? No. Okay, I got distracted. Stephanie, I'm not going to look at the screen. I can't look at the Q&As, or I'm not going to actually do the presentation. So I'm actually going to close the Q&A screen so I don't get distracted.
Yeah,
Because
it's
it just
better,
pops up.
Rochelle.
Yeah, it pops
We
up in
want
my
to hear
face.
you.
Yes. Okay. So this definition, agricultural ingredient, it was agricultural before, and it was just said, pertaining to crops and livestock and any products coming from it. We've modified this in a significant way. It shouldn't impact most operators because we've noticed this problem creeping in. And basically, this definition's been changed, and the definition's right there on your screen. This is what it's going to talk about, is processed agricultural ingredients and products may be manipulated physically or biologically, but are no longer considered to be agricultural products or agricultural ingredients if they are more than minimally processed or if they're chemically altered in a way that creates new compounds. So examples that I came up with in my mind when I was thinking through this is like beta carotene coming from carrots. It is not an agricultural ingredient under this definition. Sure, it came from carrots, but we are not including it in the agricultural ingredient definition. Um, it would have to be organic. We don't, uh, and or it would have to be organic to be added into a product, or it have to be a non-organic ingredient. And I don't think there's a listing for beta carotene in our tables. So another example would be maltodextrin. Maltodextrin comes from corn. It's a highly processed ingredient. It's not corn. So you would need to find an organic maltodextrin. You can no longer use a non-organic unless it's not commercially available. There's that little 5% allowance for non-organic ingredients if you can't find them in the organic form. So this is what this is all about, and this should stop. What we're trying to do is stop the misuse of the commercial availability clause that's in the standard, which allows the use of non-organic equivalents when the organic version isn't available. That was only supposed to be for agricultural commodities, so like cornmeal, that type of stuff, but not for something that is derived from like a maltodextrin. The other example I thought of was malitol and lecithin. You would have to use organic versions of those. Now, the hardest concept in this new definition, as far as I'm concerned, is when we use the jargon minimally processed. And this was thrown around a lot, and I'm sure we're going to be discussing this every review coming forward after this. So what we did is we added a guide into the Annex D, and Nicole, can you move ahead to the next slide? This is what you'll see in Annex D. These are examples of what we classified as a minimally processed. There's going to be splitting hairs all over the place, but if you look at these are really physical and biological things. There's no chemical process in most of these. And if there are, then it probably doesn't really meet this minimum process. So this is how you have to go forward about agricultural ingredients and products. This is the intention was always about agricultural ingredients that were so not those minor things that people are looking for. Onwards, Nicole. Okay, another major change in the definitions, and with no negative impact, no difficulty. Actually, this is increases the possible range of what operators can use. The definition for radiation has been fleshed out that it shows all the wavelengths and energy levels, trying to differentiate between ionizing and non-ionizing radiation. And on your screen, you have ionizing on the left and non-ionizing on the right. And in the standard, we are allowing the use of non-ionizing radiation that falls within the wavelength specified for specific uses. And it's going to be for, excuse me, I think I have to take a sip of water. Hold on. It's for pest and pathogen management on crops, products, and product contact surfaces, including empty hives, beehives. So you are now going to see a listing in the permitted substance lists for ionizing radiation in both table 4.2, which is relevant to crops, and in 7.3, which is the cleaning products section, because you can now use this to control pests in any of these situations. Nicole, I'm going to cough. Hold on.
Take your time.
Thank you. Now, one of the more confusing things that we resolved is this use of the word derivative. It's basically gone from the standard. It only showed up in one place in the standard. It was in a flow diagram in an annex, but there was a definition for it. And very commonly throughout the standard, the phrase derived from appeared everywhere. It was in the introduction, it was in the permitted substance lists, it was everywhere. And it was confusing everybody because the derived from really had, the intention was that if you saw the phrasing derived from, the phrasing should have been complete and should have said, derived from a biological or mineral source. Or it would have said derived from chickens and clay. Like it would have specified the actual biological material or mineral source. So we have gone through the whole standard and we have eliminated any contradictions. We've changed the wording where it shouldn't have been derived from. So in the introduction, all the derived from is gone because that's misleading because derived from implies that you need to do additional assessment. And so here are some examples that will be relevant. So the one that was changed significantly was enzymes. We changed it to originating. So the enzyme must originate from plants, animals, and microorganisms. But you don't have to do any extra work because we know enzymes are chemically different than whatever they were derived from. So there's no extra work that we want you to do. We didn't ever want you to have to try to assess compliance of an enzyme to some minutia of detail. So hopefully changing this language, just originating. It came from a plant or an animal and you're done. Okay. Similarly, derived from showed up in growth regulators for plants. So people were trying to figure out, well, what do I have to assess there? And no, we've changed that to made from. So it's just made from. It comes from something else and is a growth regulator for plants. It's permitted. Okay, and then another good example was gelatin. We also changed that to originating because what level of assessment were we really trying to establish? None. So therefore, hopefully this has eliminated all this confusion. And if anybody finds a derived from that doesn't make sense, send a question to the Standards Interpretation Committee. Onwards. Okay, now we're moving into Clause 8, which is the integrity section. So this is applicable to crops, livestock, processors, all the specialty crops. These are how to maintain the integrity of whatever activity that you're doing. One of the first places where we made some major changes, and in this particular slide, you're going to see the track changed version, because I find it easier to remember what we changed when I can see the track changes. Otherwise, I can't remember them because it's just a blur. We've been working on this for 3.5 years already, so there's no way I remember everything that we did. Anyways, one of the areas that was creating a false narrative for the industry was hand sanitizers. Everybody was getting statements from their suppliers that they were compliant, but in reality, they weren't compliant to the letter of the 2020 version of the standard. So this revision here makes more hand sanitizers truly compliant to the standard. Okay, so instead of looking at the whole formulation of a hand sanitizer now, we're specifying it's the active ingredients of the hand sanitizers. If the hands come into direct contact with the product, those are what we're talking about, okay? And yeah, so the sanitizer has to be, the hand sanitizer has to be listed on 7.3 to be able to be used on hands that touch product or gloves. If you're using hand sanitizers on gloves and then you're touching product, this 8.12a would be compliance would need to be determined. So what we've done is we've added this extra clause that synthetic dyes, synthetic fragrances, synthetic thickening agents, synthetic suspending agents, synthetic emulsifying agents, and synthetic high viscous extenders such as carbomers are not permitted. So instead of trying to force people to figure out what is compliant, we are telling you what we know isn't compliant. So if you, hand sanitizers with glycerol in them are all going to be probably compliant unless they have these extra dyes and thickeners in them. So this should make the hand sanitizers easier to establish as compliant. Okay, in the next clause, 8.51, not a major change. It was implied, but it wasn't spelled out clearly. We just tried to emphasize that if you're preparing or handling, either way, and we're talking about ingredients or products, you need to make sure that organic and non-organic are segregated. That's the big thing. Everybody knows these things. It just never said it clearly enough. So this is why this extra language was added. And the last clause, C, the most important thing here is we also emphasize the importance of identification within the facility when you are shifting organic ingredients and products around. That everybody was doing this, I think. Well, the people I inspected, but this is just to make sure that whoever picks up the standard or has to assess to the standard knows what to look for. And it's this one's pretty easy. Moving, oh, and I can show you the clean text. Nicole made clean text slides just because she likes them. And so it's exactly the same as what was on the previous screen. It just shows you what it looks like without all the markups. Nicole, we can move on. Okay. Similarly, oh, my favorite section. Okay, 8.23 is about cleaners, and 8.3 is about pest control. So let's talk about the cleaners in 8.23 first. This is not a major change, but it should simplify the auditing process because of what we're expecting operators to prove. So this is about when cleaning materials in the permitted substance lists aren't effective. Okay. Previously, we asked operators to prove the efficacy of the non-listed product. And what we've done here in A is ask the operator to show why the permitted substances, those listed in 7.3 and 7.4, are not effective. So just turning it around. We're not asking you to prove why you have to use the other one. We're asking you to prove it by telling us why those items that are listed aren't satisfactory for your operation. That's all that's been changed in there beyond the grammar. 8.32. Well, 8.3, which is about pest control, had a lot of revisions in it, a lot of changes, and the driver behind all these changes was one petition that really resonated with all the committees, everybody on the technical committee, on the working groups, the task force, and it was about rodent control, about glue boards should be prohibited, that glue boards should not be used, they're inhumane. I have spent more time on glue boards than anything else in this revision. And we've rewritten this section umpteen times to try to add clarity. Now, glue boards are not glue boards for rodent control are not outright prohibited. And I'll explain that in a second. But glue boards also have another function for processors. And so that's why I just want to go through 8.32 in a logical order. Okay? So in 8.32, we're talking about mechanical and physical methods of management, of pest management. And so the new clause, what we added, covers sticky tape, sticky traps, or glue boards for insect monitoring and control. So those the little sticky things that you put at the bottom of a light trap, okay? Those are totally compliant. Those can be used all the time. Same as B, live capture traps and snap traps. And then C refers you over to 8.1, table 8.1 in the permitted substance lists, which are lures, repellents, and baits. Those all can be used that are listed in 8.1. Nicole, can we see the next slide? I know it's a clean version of this, isn't it? Oh, it isn't. Okay, good. Whew. Makes it much easier to roll on. Okay, so 8.33 is when those practices in 8.31 and 8.32, and 8.31 is about, the environment, and it's preventative measures, all about preventative measures for pest control. So making sure your building's sealed if you have a sealable building, that you clean, you get rid of all rodent habitat or insect and pest habitat. And so 8.33 is basically saying if those don't work, then you can use pest control substances listed in 8.1. And if you have a rodent infestation, this is what B is about, you can use glue boards in those situations. And that is the only time we are permitting the use of glue boards for rodents, is when there is an infestation. Our reasoning was this: glue boards are not effective when you don't have the numbers. So if there's not a lot of mice running around, you might catch one occasionally. But where glue boards, and we spoke to a lot of experts about this, glue boards are effective when there's a population explosion, because then they're moving all over the place and it's easy to catch them. This is where we limited the glue board use because of that petition that pointed out the importance of understanding that glue boards are not humane. So this was the compromise. Our compromise was to not permit them for everyday use in operations for rodents, but allow them when there is an infestation. This is going to take some adjustment, I believe. Depending on the operation, I've sort of seen some messages already that some people think they should be able to use them to monitor their mice population, but that can be done in other ways. And keep reminding yourself the reason why we did this was because there was a huge outcry about the inhumanity of using glue boards. And, we have to be sensitive to consumers because this was consumers who said, yes, we're not comfortable with this. Okay, so 8.34 again is about that rodent control thing that the traps are checked regularly, that the animals that are captured there are disposed of promptly and humanely. This is very vague. We didn't say it has to be done by a technician who's been trained or done daily. It has to be applicable for the operation, and that will be assessed. This is probably going to take a little time for everybody to get used to on how we're going to do this if you end up using glue boards for rodent control. Okay, now more changes. 8.35. I'm actually going to read this one because it's confusing. I keep thinking we finally get this one right, and we never get it right because this covers so many operations. Yeah, Nicole, I already want to rewrite this one. It's still not good enough because we are covering farms, livestock operations, like all farms, all types of farms, and processing operations. Okay, so 8.35 now says if the practices specified in 8.32 are ineffective, effective substances not listed in table 8.1. That's probably should be 8.32 and 8.33, but maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe I'm redundant. I'm having a moment. Not listed in table 8.1 may be used. So they're saying if none of this works, you can use stuff that's not listed as long as there's no risk to organic product status or integrity. So let's keep going. The following conditions apply. A, if pest activity assessments justify the use of fumigation or fogging, operators shall ensure and document that organic products or the packaging materials are not present when these substances are used. So there was requests to allow stuff in warehouses to be covered by plastic sheeting if there was fogging or spraying. That is not, we did not change the standard to allow that. The materials must be removed from the location where the treatment's taking place. So that we're being adamant about, and that has to be documented. Okay, moving on. If rodent activity assessments justify using rodenticide containing baits, the bait shall be enclosed in tamper-proof containers in locations where there's no potential for contamination of organic products, crops, or fields, and not be used inside organic product processing areas or organic product storage areas. So this might seem a little confusing. So we're saying that you can use rodenticides, but don't contaminate anything. That's basically what this is saying. And to me, what we were trying to really say here is if you're on a farm, you cannot use rodenticides on the exterior of a building or inside a building. You really can't, because there's a risk to your crops, to your livestock, to the ground, to the water. Okay? But in my mind, this is also saying if I'm running a manufacturing plant and I'm in a cement jungle, I can use whatever rodenticides on the outside of the building, and it doesn't impact my organic status at all because it's outside the building and it's in a tamper-proof container where the animals, the bait can't get anywhere. That's what I think 8.35 is talking about. And we still have to do a better job about it. We still don't allow rodenticides inside processing areas or product storage areas, but that's consistent with food safety programs anyway. So this shouldn't be too dysfunctional for everybody. Let's look at the next slide, Nicole.
Yeah.
Oh, oh,
Sorry.
oh, it's okay. Oh, wow. You did jump ahead.
I know.
All right.
Okay, sorry.
We're good. We're good. Okay. Um, that was all the changes made in section 8 and clause 8. And now here are the few changes in composition, which is covered by clause 9. We just tried to simplify the math, what people were doing in terms of the math to figure out the organic content, their composition. So in clause A, we just said do the math according to the formulation versus the finished product. Everybody was getting confused. Just use the formulation. In liquid products, this is a reversal. Okay, in 2020, we changed the standard for liquids where we said if you bought an ingredient and had water in it, you got to take that water out before you do all your math. Now we're saying, oh, don't bother. That's basic. We're saying go back to the 2016 version, and it's the water that you added that is subtracted. And similarly in C, that's basically the takeaway from that. It's the water that you add that's subtracted, not the water that you add as ingredients. That is basically this should simplify math for most operations. Onwards, Nicole. And there we
The
can see the
clean
clean
version.
version. Yeah, very nice. Looks much better. Another major change is for livestock feeds. It turns out livestock feeds the math was very odd. I never thought we would see 70 to 95 labeled livestock feeds, but it turns out it was happening. And so this revision was to eliminate that category because it didn't make any sense. What's 70 to 95 in a livestock feed? So basically, we're saying that if a livestock feed includes agricultural ingredients and feed supplements and additives that are on the PSL, the livestock feed is organic. That's the end of it. So you don't have to do any math. You just have to ensure that your agricultural ingredients are all organic and that your additives are all listed in table 5.2 of 32311. And then you're done with livestock feed. Easy peasy. Okay? And there's an explanation there on the bottom half of the slide, but that's all it's basically saying. There it is. It's so simple now. Don't do any math. Just ensure compliance. Okay, Nicole, we can move on. Oh, okay. Um, this change came about because of the addition of aquaculture ingredients. Okay. With the promulgation of the aquaculture standard 32312 in 2018, no, I don't remember what year, um, it allows for aquaculture ingredients to be used in an agricultural product. So we had to make this modification so we could say aquaculture ingredients. So an example is uh, seafood lasagna. Is seafood lasagna certified under 3312, the aquaculture standard, or is it certifiable under 32310? It's 32310 because it has a combination of agricultural ingredients and aquaculture ingredients, and also 32312 points processing compliance 232.310. So that's why all these modifications have been made to allow for aquaculture ingredients. And that's all it's really changed here. So this was very complicated to do because we had 3 references of standards to cover. Onwards, Nicole. There's a clean version of it. Okay. Moving on to the permitted substance list. I'm just checking my time. Okay. Hopefully, this is simplifying people's lives. We had a listing called acid in table 6.3 and some of it in table 6.5. And we were adding more acids. There were new acids being added. So somebody pointed out that it would make sense that instead of guessing where the acids were listed, because some were listed individually and some were in the acid grouping, we pulled out all the acid listings like these and separated them out. And so you'll see them in 6.3 as ingredients and also in 6.5 as processing aids. And there's no change. Um, Yeah, there's no change in the listings, in the annotations. But one of the reasons why we added them into 6.5 is to ensure no matter which way people were talking about language or whatever like that, um, that a substance could be used. And the best example was lactic acid. Lactic acid in our standard up to now was always listed in 7.3. And 7.3 in the PSL is cleaning products that can come in contact directly with an organic product without a rinse, without anything. It can come in contact. So to us, well, to my crazy mind, that meant that carcasses could be washed with lactic acid. But CFIA refers to carcass washes as processing aids. So we didn't have lactic acid in 6.5 processing aids up to now. So making it difficult for people to say, oh, yeah, it's permitted, I can use it. So by just duplicating it into 6.5, we are facilitating that language about carcass washes with lactic acid, making sure that everybody can use it, that there's not any difficulty with using the product. Okay, onwards.
What? Sorry, I have. Okay, it moves that way. Okay, sorry.
Hey, gives me a moment to breathe, Nicole. It's all good. Um, very minor change done to calcium chloride in 6.3. There was the addition of beer in subclause E, beer brewing to adjust the level of calcium. And this was an easy addition. Um, when a lot of the permitted substance lists were reviewed, the only alcoholic beverage that was really being talked about in the organic sector was wine. There wasn't a lot of beer at that time. So a lot of the substances were never assessed for beer. And so we're backtracking or vinegar. And that's another thing that you're going to see, or for vinegar fermentation. It wasn't really, people weren't talking about it a lot. So a lot of the changes that we are making in 2026 is just to broaden the allowances to allow for beer, allow for all types of alcohol, and for fermentation, vinegar type of fermentations and stuff like that. So that's what happened with calcium chloride. Onwards. Oh yeah, this is a very confusing slide. And again, it has to do with alcohol. So just bear with me. Um, we, in the previous version, we had a listing called yeast foods. So they were substances that could be fed to yeast foods to sustain the yeast production. Um, we eliminated that listing and replaced it with two separate listings, the dibasic ammonium phosphate, known as DAP, and the potassium chloride listing in 6.3. No real changes in there, okay? But what we did is we added a 6.4 listing and we added in an allowance for vinegar and alcohol production. Because before it just used to say from mine sources such as sulfite, carbonate, and potash, and that was it. So now we got all this allowance for potassium chloride to be used in alcohol manufacturing and vinegar manufacturing. Onwards. Okay. Long chain polyunsaturated fatty acids. Woohoo! We now have a listing for those too. Um, Algal oil, omega 3s, omega 6s are all long chain polyunsaturated fatty acids. The key takeaway from all these new listings that were added at the last minute was that they are limited to infant formula, except for amino acids. Amino acids is infant formula and formulated liquid diets. Okay, but everything else that you're going to see here is infant formula only. So this is a very narrow usage. And the main reason why we did it is because Canadian operators, there was organic product being imported from other countries containing these ingredients with organic certification, and it was a disadvantage for organic processors. But there's a limited narrow use where these can be used. Let's see the next slide because that's the poly chain, long chain poly unsaturated. Oh, here it is. Okay. And one of the reasons why we could do this so easily is because of the addition of aquaculture ingredients being recognized under 32312 because a lot of them come from algal sources. I mean, ARA, which is acrodonic acid, comes from fungal sources, but most of these do come from um, algae sources, which now are certifiable. But these don't have to be certified. These are permitted under the non-organic ingredient list, under the permitted substance list, if they come from the sources identified. Okay? So if your DHA comes from an algal source, you can use it in an infant formula. Same with ARA. Okay? Let's see, is there anything else here? No. So don't get excited that you can put this in all sorts of foods. Can't go in milk. That's where some people probably would have wanted to put it, but no, this is where we're at. Onwards. One significant change and one significant change. Okay, it turns out that if we're looking at starches, that there is a supply of organic cornstarch coming available or is available. Maybe not in the quantity everybody needs, but hey, so we've added a commercially available clause into the cornstarch aspect of the starch listing, which means you now have to do a little bit of due diligence. If you were using non-organic cornstarch previously, you would now have to do a commercial availability search to ensure that there's not an organic supply of the quality and quantity that you want. Not huge change, but one that might impact some operators that they have to be prepared. Remember, you have a year to come into compliance with all these changes. So in 2026, your certifier will probably be saying, hey, you need to get on board with this stuff once they get their head around all the changes. And by 2027, you would have to actually be in compliance and have your commercial availability search available if you're not using organic cornstarch. Uh, One other significant change is in the anti-foaming agents. Anti-foaming agents used to be under incidental additives in the definition of incidental additives, um, and were covered by 8.11 in the integrity clause. But it was maple syrup, maple production was it was getting confusing because they had different language about anti-foaming agents. So by moving anti-foaming agents um, into 6.5, we've added clarity um, and make uh, yeah, making it easier for everybody to know what is necessary in an anti-foaming agent. So if the anti-foaming agent contains organic ingredients, it can come in contact with an organic product, no problem, move on. And that will facilitate the maple sector as well. So that's why we now have a processing aid listing in 6.5 for anti-foaming agents. And most anti-foaming agents that we see are, well, they're usually got some type of vegetable oil or and a few other ingredients in them. And there are organic anti-foaming agents available, and they've been certified for a very, very long time. So this is basically saying use organic anti-foaming agents. So that'll impact maple syrup, it'll impact tofu operators, maybe. I'm not sure. We'll see. No, it won't, because all the tofu operators already have organic anti-foaming agents. I'm thinking to myself, and I shouldn't be. Moving on. Detergents. Well, actually, this was a simplification. This should streamline things. It was what was always intended, but it wasn't written correctly. So the revision of clause 2 here actually will expedite compliance assessment for some detergents. And we just made sure that people understood that detergents are products. They're not just detergents. They're products. They're a combination of substances, usually soaps and surfactants, and maybe some other cleaners in them. But they have to be biodegradable. So what we said in clause subclause two here is if you have a detergent that is a combination of substances listed in 7.3 or 7.4, and if there's surfactants and their surfactants are known to be biodegradable, the detergent product is compliant. You don't have to go through an extra assessment process to ascertain the compliance of that detergent. Otherwise, you have to prove that it's readily eliminated in the wastewater treatment, which is sometimes very difficult for operators. So fixing number subclause 2 really should expedite compliance of some detergents for some people. Onwards. Oh, glycerol. Okay, this is in 7.3, so this is a cleaning product. Um, so glycerol now, if you're using it to clean your hands, any type of glycerol can be used. If you're applying the glycerol on organic products, then the restrictions on the source remain from the previous version, meaning that the glycerol has to be made from vegetable or animal fat and produced using fermentation or by hydrolysis. So we've moved hands separately for glycerol. Onwards. Oh yeah, and here's the non-ionizing radiation. Um, you'll see it in 7.3, there will be a listing. You can manage pest loads on product and on contact surfaces. So that's anywhere and empty hives. We're very excited about this because, this is a non-chemical cleaning option that should maybe reduce some costs once you get your equipment up to speed. I don't know how you're going to deliver the non-ionizing radiation. Some of the equipment's expensive. So it's going to be interesting to see what people do here. Then surfactants. Okay. Excuse me. I'm going to have to cough again. Okay. Surfactants. Surfactants were always listed in 7.4, which meant there had to be an intervening event after their use. So, but those were non-biodegradable surfactants. So this listing is about biodegradable surfactants. And this was created just to streamline stuff and to be able to say, hey, you can use biodegradable surfactants to wash eggs. That was the key thing. So if you can verify that your surfactants are biodegradable, then you can wash eggs with that. Okay? Onwards. Okay, we added another acid, methane sulfonic acid. It's not as strong an acid as nitric or sulfuric acid, but it gave us one more option in 7.4 for an acid that operators could use without having to say, I have to use a cleaner that's not on the list. So this, we agreed to this because it's found in the environment anyways, and it helps with dissolving minerals. So it helps expedite the cleaning process for a lot of manufacturing. And I think we're getting close to the end, Nicole. Oh yeah, what are we doing here? Oh, okay. This is in the PSL. This is still in the permitted substance list. This is all again about pest management. And one of the things that got overlooked over the years is the all-inclusive sentences in the introductions in the scope, which sort of said that everything that you used has to comply with 1.4 and 1.5 and 32310, which is problematic for pest control materials. So we've added a clause, 8.11C, that specifically states pest materials do not need to comply with 1.4 and 1.5 of the standard. That should eliminate a lot of unnecessary work for pest control products because that's about GMOs, that's about nanotechnology, it's about every prohibited substance out there. Excuse me. Um, and pest control products are prohibited substances. So it was confusing. Hopefully, this eliminates that problem. And in 8.2, table 8.2, we add some clarity around the bait listing because it was a blank annotation and it was driving people crazy because then nobody knew what it meant. So we basically are saying that you can use non-poisonous baits when there's no potential of contamination. Um, and that's the end of that. Like, so you can do that. That's no problem. Um, yeah, nothing exciting there. It used to be blank. That's the only problem with that listing. What's really exciting is what happened with botanical oils because we used to have a listing for clove oil exclusively. And there's been so much research into this area of what can be used for sprout inhibitors that we now, based on the science that was provided, we're able to broaden this to include oils from the mint family, from the celery family, plus the clove oil can all be used for post-harvest sprout inhibitors. I think that's fantastic. There you go. We actually, I think, help expedite this research, the organic sector, because we needed tools for sprout inhibition. Where are we, Nicole? Are we at the end now? Yeah, we are. Okay, do you want to say anything? And I'll take a quick look at the questions, see if I can answer any of them. Uh, you're muted. You're still muted. You're still muted. Bottom left.
Sorry. Stephanie, hi lady, are there any changes to reporting requirements?
Stephanie, that was covered in another, you know what? We should have done the organic plan. Sorry, Nicole, I never thought about it. There's no real changes. If you were transparent, you had lock codes, you kept records, there's no change. There's no change in what's necessary for reporting requirements. Nicole, would you agree with that? Is that an oversimplification?
Yeah, but the reporting maybe it was a reference to the organic plan that is more detailed. in some of the presentations, because the organic plan, all the list of the information that is requested by an inspector is detailed. That was not
Yeah.
as detailed before, but the requirements are the same. It is just better described.
Yeah. So if your paperwork's been good and your certifier hasn't been giving you grief and you've been auditable in a reasonable time, you're not going to have any problems. There's no changes otherwise.
We have
Okay.
Beth Rota. How can something that is
Something
not
that
an
is not.
agricultural ingredient be organic?
Well, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. It would have to be listed on the if it's not an agricultural ingredient, then to be able to use it, it has to be listed on the permitted substance list in table 6.3 or 6.4. So Beth, I'm not sure if I answered your question. If you have an extra question, please answer that in. Put your type in another question and I'll try to answer it better. Oh,
Anonymous attendee, I know that starch is permitted under 6.4 and the starch can be modified using physical and enzymatic methods, which would allow the use of some forms of maltodextrin, although it would not be allowed as an ag ingredient. This may be a clarification question for the sick.
go back to Nicole, can you go back to the starch listing? It was like 3 slides back.
Just one second. Yeah. Starch. Do you want me to share screen?
Yes, please, just so everybody can see the same screen, because this came in earlier
Okay.
than the question. Then they came in before the slide, the question.
No, I know, but I'm just trying to exit my full screen here so that I can share my screen. Oh, wait a minute, please. Here, boom. Sorry.
Okay, well, I'll answer another question while you're getting that up, okay?
No,
Does the
it's
change,
there.
okay,
Just one sec. Starch. You see it?
yep, okay. So the listing for starch is really narrow. It's rice, waxy maize, cornstarch. It's not about derivatives of starch. I hope that answers that question. Moving on to
Okay,
the next
next one, does the change to glue boards also apply to their use within the
tin cats.
within tin cats?
Yeah,
How the
okay.
inspector check this on site?
Well, you can tell just by the usage. If they're using um, if they're using glue boards, it's going to show up on the replacement sheets on what they've been using in the plant. Or out, it'll say exterior or interior. And if they're using glue interior, yeah, they can't use them anymore. Now, if that's going to become problematic to the industry, then we'll have to petition again and get a change during the next review. But based on the assessment done during this review, the use of glue boards, unless there's an infestation, is done. You can't use them unless there's an infestation, period. Not in tin cats. Now, you could use them on the outside of a manufacturing facility because that's outside the scope really of the standard. It's inside. Okay.
Then, from
Uh,
Marie-France, is compliance to these clauses, for example, pest control clauses required for warehouses where organic products are stored, fully packaged, no open products
yeah. Yep.
everywhere? Okay,
Uh,
then, yeah.
how do I say this? I- If it's a warehouse that is all the products are sealed and whatever, what pest problems are they having? And that would actually be a real flag for me because they make it sound like nothing's open. So how can you have a pest problem?
And
Uh,
facility pest management substances are described at PSL table 8.2, correct? It's cited at table 8.1 in this presentation.
well, you might be right, Evan. We have CGSP kept changing the numbering on our tables,
Yeah,
and we might have messed up. So
yeah.
yeah, I apologize if it is an error because you're probably right. I can look at my standard and figure that out right now, but that's too funny.
Would you please define promptly using 834?
That's what I don't want to touch. Okay. Um, if you look at SPCA rules and anything else that has a humane aspect to it, promptly is every day. It's daily. And we didn't want to say that because it might be too much for some operations. It would depend on the monitoring. Like if you are having a real problem with rodents and you're not checking them daily, it is going to be problematic. But if you're past that stage and you're in your tin cats and stuff like that, it would really be up to the operator and in discussion with the certifier and with the verification officer, and they'll have to decide if it seems reasonable. I know that's a terrible answer because it would be much easier if we said daily, and but that got booed down.
Alison Grant, wow, you just said that farm operations cannot use bait boxes with rodenticides outside of buildings. Is that
Correct. That is correct, Allison, because that would compromise the integrity of the farm.
no? Anonymous
Okay.
attendee, sorry, do you have something to add? Yeah.
No, no.
Do manufacturers need to provide this or just farms? Plan to
Plan to
minimize
minimize.
potential for non-target wildlife poisoning when baits containing rodenticide are used.
Boop, 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 boop,
Okay,
boop.
so okay, now I understand. So do you have to show that you minimize potential for non-target wildlife
That
poisoning?
that's in clause 4, isn't it?
For
Ugh, I can't remember where that is. Which clause is that?
when I that non-target wildlife should not be targeted.
Oh, that's in that new section. It is clause 4. I'm pretty sure. You know what? Let Allison talk for a second. Can you give Allison, can you address that one? Because you're here.
Attends un peu. Okay, I have to open my list of participants and allow Alison Grant to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah.
Allowed to talk. Alison?
Hello. So what's the question? I still can't see it.
Yeah, you can't see it. So this is the question. Dee, dee, dee. Do manufacturers need to provide this or just farms plan to minimize potential for non-target wildlife poisoning when baits containing rodenticides are used? Is that in
Well,
clause
that is in
4?
8.3.5, C4, and it says operators shall clearly document. So I would say that's Rochelle's already said we're not supposed to use it out on the farm, or any poisoning baits. Um, yeah. So if you're outside a building, um, that possibly could, instead of rats getting into your bait traps, it could be squirrels and other little mammals, then you've got to come up with a plan to minimize that. And it says,
Yeah,
I think it says it clearly.
yep, yep,
Where is it?
It's
No.
8.3.5, but it's not on your screen because
yeah,
it's in C.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so it's
So
everything.
operators shall clearly document. So if
Yeah,
you're in an industrial park and you have bait stations outside, with poison or
835?
yeah,
Yeah.
835.
835.
Yeah,
C4.
page 77. Yeah, there we go.
C, operators shall clearly document why substances were not suitable, how operators prevented contact between organic products, packaging materials, crop fields with substances. Here, a plan to minimize potential for non-target wildlife poisoning. It's here. Okay, C4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So clearly that would apply to farms because we assume that they're in rural and there's more chance of wildlife. But I've been in industrial parks that are on the edge of a green belt, and there's all kinds of little critters running around. So it would be everybody.
It would be everybody.
Yeah.
And then there's
Okay.
another question, Allison, don't disappear. 8.35
Rodenticide.
rodenticide use on farm. It would appear to allow use of rodenticides inside machinery cabs over winter. This is one area I've seen on farm rodenticides that really would not pose a risk to crops, stored products, water, or livestock. I have to agree with you, Stuart. I think you're very right.
Me too. And if we don't, they'll just start chewing on those soy plastic wire coverings, which I just learned recently that that's what attracts the rats to chewing on wires in vehicles is the fact that that plastic is now made from soy.
You know, I'm telling you, we know 8.35 is going to cause a lot of confusion for a while for everybody until we get it straight. Stuart, would you do me a favor? Would you send off a question about this specifically to the Standards Interpretation Committee? Because we do need to be clear and transparent to make it easier for everybody.
Yeah. Oh, gee, thanks. Another question for the sick.
8.35.
And
Okay.
another question, Rochelle, if you have a hard stop, tell me, but we're continuing questions regarding, again, rodenticide use on farms. Do I understand the comment right that it is outright prohibited now because of contamination risk to soil, water, and livestock?
Yes. I mean, if you can prove that there is no risk, I think a certifier would have to pay attention to you, but I don't see how you can do that. So we'll have to continue this discussion, and clarity will have to be added as we go along. Okay.
And I do think that there might be conditions like if it's the machinery yard
Yeah.
and I am a livestock operation and I don't have crops in the field, I just have silos pumping feed into my chicken barn and the pastures on the other side, then maybe there are instances where it would be allowable.
Then
Right.
what about the alcohol-based inputs which have been used for cleaning machines? Is there a specific requirement?
No, alcohol has always been allowed for cleaning. There's been no changes, Santosh. Okay, and Tim just pointed out because he realized I didn't remember when the aquaculture standards got implemented. It was in 2013, but it took us this long to be able to get them total recognition within the 32310. Thanks, Tim. Okay, so then we're on to
But let me follow up. But they didn't come into force until they were added to the SFCR in January of 2019, and that was before. Yeah, so the timing was off.
Yeah, so they got promulgated right when we were publishing the last version, and so we couldn't adjust fast enough, and that's why the delay. Okay, a terrible question from
Baronham,
Yeah.
why limited to infant formula only when it is allowed in other products for US operators for milk alternatives? About infant formula, I suppose it is algal oil?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's strictly an exception only for the infant oils because it is legally required to have certain levels of omegas in infant formulas in Canada. And we're not the United States. So sorry.
Yes, that would be fortification. That's not really required in Canada.
Shoot.
It's not even permitted in Canada. The same with the new supplemental foods
right.
category, right?
Yep, that whole mess. Okay. Thank you, Allison. Okay.
Ed Alaret, what is the implementation period for the standard change? 1 year.
I just want to qualify that. It's 1 year for everything that doesn't have a specific clause that states otherwise. Under the processing, everything is a year, but there are some other places where there's more latitude. Okay.
So next question, should sprout inhibitors really in 8.2? So, my gosh, until the last minute, we had an argument with CGSB about the table numbering. She said we would go because under CGSB logic.
No. This is a different question.
No.
Okay, go ahead, Nicole.
Listen, sprout inhibitors are in table 8.3. So, okay, I'm sorry, let me, because under CGSB logic, if you have a first introductory clause as 8.1, you should call the next table 8.2. We argued on, and finally they said that this table, the table number would be with 8.1 because it is a table, not a clause, and they didn't do it. So check that. We have botanical oils under 8.3. Shoot. Well, sorry, I'm just discovering this thing. We will adjust. So thanks, Baron. Oh, okay. Excellent presentation. Yes, Rochelle, bravo, brava. Where is info on allowable sprout inhibitors in table 8.3?
Right,
There is
but if
confusion about
you're
table numbers.
if you're asked, yeah, the table numbers at that part of the standard, we have to get them fixed.
Lorsqu'on analyse un produit nettoyant, yeah.
Read the French one to yourself and tell me what it means, but I want to talk about the sprout inhibitors a little longer. The sprout
Okay, go, Rochelle,
inhibitors,
sorry.
if you want to know what's are allowable, you'll look at the listing that we've got in 8 point, whatever table it is, 8.3 or 8.2. But then you're going to have to go to PMRA. You're going to have to look for a registered sprout inhibitor that is registered in Canada for use that meets the requirements of the botanical oil listing. Does that help? If you have a problem with that, write back another answer. Okay, what's the French question, please?
The French is that if you have a cleaning product, as you should only read the SDF description and active products, because an example is given that there would be on the label of a product you would have EDTA, but it is not on the spec sheet. So is it still considered a complying cleaning product? Because it's so the question is about there's EDTA adding on the label of the product, but the EDTA is not listed on the spec sheet.
Okay, if it's coming in contact with the product, then you look at the label because it's coming in contact with the organic product. If you're just cleaning equipment, it doesn't matter because there's going to be an intervening rinse or intervening activity. So I hope that answers that question.
Alors
okay.
là, Rochelle a dit que si ce n'est pas en contact, un produit en contact avec les aliments biologiques comme tel, ça serait correct. Mais si c'est un produit nettoyant en contact direct avec un produit biologique, là, il faudrait vraiment éliminer s'assurer que toutes les substances interdites sont absentes du produit.
Okay. Allison, the next comment was from you explaining what maltodextrin is. It's a highly processed water-soluble white powder derived from corn, rice, potato, or wheat starch, commonly used as a thickener, filler, or preservative in processed foods. So just to tell you what maltodextrin is used for. Next question. Do you foresee any changes to plant protection product ingredients? No, because that's outside of our scope. That's under the jurisdiction of PMRA. I don't know if I'm answering your question. Allison, do you see a different answer to that question?
Read that to me again.
Do you foresee any changes to plant protection product ingredients?
To the ingredients? Well, that means they would have to be permitted by table 4.2 or the PMRA list A, or whatever those numbers are. There's a couple of lists that we allow. But yeah, that's just the basic rule. You can't approve any substance for use unless the ingredients are listed in table 4.2.
Yeah.
But we did add a couple of new substances, which are considered plant protection, like chitosan and polyoxin D zinc, but that's in table 4.2 of the permitted substances list.
And non-ionizing radiation. Don't forget that. Okay,
Yay,
Nicole,
and non-ionizing. Yes, this is true.
radiation.
UVC lights are permitted in your greenhouse.
Nicole, I got another
Okay.
French one. Can you help me, please?
Yeah, it's quite similar to the previous one. It is that in the class 713, it is written that all the ingredients, active ingredients, should be listed in tables 7.3 and 7.4. But then there are also other ingredients that would be listed on the label. These extra ingredients on the label should they be listed in tables 7.3, 7.4?
Yes. Yes, if it's coming in contact, and it should be in 7.3 if coming in contact with an organic product. Yeah.
Alors oui, si c'est en contact avec les produits biologiques. Can Blue Board be used for the pest monitoring?
Yes, yes. Glue boards, like for insect monitoring and stuff like that, totally permitted. Totally permitted. No restrictions, no nothing. Okay.
For
Yeah, go ahead.
certifiers, sorry, Roshan. For certifiers, how many times do we have to apply this change?
There's a year. There's a year
How many
for
times?
implementation. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Another French one. May I have help, please?
If a substance is not listed on the spec sheet, it means that the product doesn't contain any dangerous products. Does it mean that the product is complying, is good for organic production?
Can you say that again, Nicole?
I'll take that one, Rochelle.
Okay.
The
Yeah, you
active
understood?
and inactive ingredients have to be reviewed for compliance, and there would be a number of inactive ingredients and possibly some non-lethal active ingredients that you are not going to find on your safety data sheet. So, and often you have to ask the manufacturer for a complete listing of what all the ingredients are. So, and that absolutely is what's required for 7.3 with substances in contact with organic products.